2, 3, 4. Let me tell you about PuckPedia, stats, contracts, and caps. It's all there for you. One-stop shop for your hockey information. It's a hockey sensation. So log on, log on, log on. If you give a puck, go to PuckPedia.com.
Welcome to episode 1 of the PuckPedia Hockey Show. I'm your host, Keith Cavanaugh. This weekly show will bring on prominent guests in the hockey world. Former and current team execs, agents, media members, and others. We will provide a behind-the-scenes look on the transaction side of hockey. Think trades, free agency, salary cap, NHL Draft, anything you have access to on PuckPedia.com, we will be talking about on this show. In the first episode today, we will be bringing on Jason Bukala, founder of the Pro Hockey Group. Jason has spent 15 years in NHL front offices in the amateur scouting department with the Nashville Predators and most recently with the back-to-back reigning defending Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers. During the 2020 pandemic, Jason founded the Pro Hockey Group, where his experienced scouts and data analysts provide scouting reports for draft-eligible players and current NHL players. Jason and the Pro Hockey Group have also partnered with PuckPedia, where you have access to 396 scouting reports directly on the PuckPedia website under the Scouting tab. And now until June 30th, for $1 US or Canadian, you can access these reports with an offer on the main homepage of PuckPedia's website. Jason also does media hits for Sportsnet. He's a panelist in studio and also on the Matt Marchese and Mike Feuda Fan Hockey Show, as well as Real Kipper and Bourne. Jason is also on NHL Network breaking down his draft-eligible prospects. You'll see him a lot in the next couple of weeks talking about this year's NHL Draft. Without further ado, let's drop the puck. We now welcome on our first guest to the PuckPedia Hockey Show. It's Jason Bukala. Books, how you doing today?
Fantastic, Keith. This is exciting news for you guys. I'm happy to be here.
Well, we're happy to have you, and let's just kind of dive right in here. So we're in the month of June right now. We're about a week away from the NHL Draft here. What is it like? You know, you have 15 years of experience in NHL amateur scouting departments. What's this month like between you have the combine and then you also have player interviews, you're finalizing your draft boards, and then obviously you have the draft itself. How chaotic is this time, and what is some good stuff behind the scenes you can kind of lend us an eye on?
Yeah, it is hectic. It's a culmination of years, more than a year's worth of work, because you start, Keith, scouting this type of a draft class as an underage group, and you start to build a catalog on them ahead of this scouting cycle, which really began last August at the Holinka Gretzky tournament in Edmonton, and then obviously concludes in Los Angeles here next week. It's an exciting time. The combine provides you the opportunity to meet with the kids face to face if you already haven't done so, especially our upper management, and get to know them on a personal level, get to know what they like to do outside of the game of hockey, golf, baseball, whatever, other interests, travel, whatever the case may be. And so that's enlightening, I would say, and it's stressful for them too, because a lot of these kids have never even been in a job interview before, really. And now they walk into a room full of 7 or 8 NHL executives, and, it's not exactly the most comfortable half an hour of their lives, especially if they're going through upwards of 32 interviews. So you kind of have to make sure you make them feel comfortable, bring out the best in them, and understand, or make them understand, we're not here to interrogate you. We're here to get to know you better. And you go from there. But having said that, these are multi-million-dollar decisions that you're making, so you want to get as much information as you possibly can. As far as stories go, I can tell you that for this draft class specifically, and I'm not blowing smoke at this class, it's a true fact, this is one of the most grounded, well-rounded group of young prospects that I've dealt with in my career. And the reason I say that is that I've gone through a lot of ebbs and flows with kids where they're really kind of coached up on how to present at the combine, whether it be by their agents, their coaching staff, I don't know, whoever did that for them. And they're kind of robotic, you know what I mean, Keith? And here, this past week and a half ago in Buffalo, it wasn't like that at all. They were really natural, all the kids, and nobody overshot their trajectory, which is really comforting because, if he's a third line guy, he's a third line guy and he's telling you that's what I'm going to be. I'm going to be this. He's not a third line guy telling me he's going to score 90 points in the NHL and be a top line guy. And This draft class is all about that, right? This is a draft class that's going to insulate the top of a lot of lineups with a lot of good quality middle of the lineup players. And to a man, they all did a fantastic job, and you learn a lot. It's like Will Moore from the U.S. National Team Development Program. He's a concert pianist. He's played at Carnegie Hall before, and that's obviously pretty cool. And you learn about guys who've been in long drive contests. And I can tell you a quick story. I know I'm going on a little bit here, but I did have and I can't tell you the name. I'll let you figure it out. But potential future Hall of Famer. This is way back before 2010 when I was working for the Nashville Predators, and we had a future Hall of Famer come into our room, and where we were selecting in the draft. He didn't think he thought we were wasting his time. He came walking and he says, like, why am I here? I'm not going to fall to you. Right. And he proceeded to pour himself a glass of water on the board from the boardroom table, took his shoes off, put his feet up on the table, and leaned back in the chair for the interview. And we're like, what is, so our upper management at the time said, has it ever occurred to you that we might trade up in the draft to potentially acquire your rights or acquire a slot that would make sense to draft you? And it was bananas. Obviously, the kid took his feet off the table at that point, and we got down to business. But some of these kids are uber confident, no doubt about that.
Yeah, and actually that brings up a good point I wanted to lead into a little bit. So this year's draft, there are some rumors around the 3rd overall pick, the 4th overall pick, that those picks may be in play, maybe due to the lack of high-level talent at the top of this draft. It's generally viewed as a weaker draft compared to the last few years. So my question is, do you see any of these teams kind of moving those picks to acquire NHL-ready talent? A couple names that have been in the rumor mill, right? Elias Pettersson from the Vancouver Canucks, Noah Dobson from the New York Islanders. Do you see some teams making some big splashes to get some NHL talent? And do you see a team like the Blackhawks or the Mammoth willing to move back to do that?
Yeah, so the Blackhawks need to turn the corner sooner than later. So I think that's a real scenario that could play out actually for both teams. Chicago's in a different situation. They're obviously coming out of a significantly deep rebuild, and that marketplace is craving the Hawks to get back to being the Hawks of hopefully the mid 2010s to 2020 era there. And so, yeah, I think that picks in play. The appetite to make it happen, curious to see where that goes. Again, on my list specifically, I've got Michael Misa in the 3 slot. And I think he's going to move the needle. I think he's going to be a top-line player, but doesn't move the needle enough for somebody to give up a high-end talent NHL player right now to take on that risk. We'll see, maybe. I do believe Utah at 4 for sure are going to be very aggressive. That's found money for them. They won the secondary lottery, if you will, and moved up 10 spots. And I think that they're right in the wheelhouse to make something significant happen. They've got a ton of draft assets over the last 3 years. They drafted over 33 players. So they got a lot of assets to play with. They can't sign them all. And now they got the 4th slot in this draft. I think that's in play for sure to make the Mammoth better sooner than later. And they've got tons of dough to spend. People can go to PuckPedia to check it out. They got tons of space to spend a lot of money in free agency.
Yeah, and then for like those teams too, do you ever view it? Is there a right or wrong time to draft the best available player versus a player for need in your organization? How do you weigh those two different things?
Yeah, my experience has always been that we're drafting the best possible player, period. That's what we're doing. We don't draft for need in the first round, especially because you have to manage the asset accordingly. You don't know that player is ever going to end up suiting up for you on your roster. And it has to be attractive enough for everybody else in the league in case you were to move the asset. So and you know what, let's be honest, like there's healthy competition there too. What happens if that player ends up being sooner than later better than somebody on your NHL roster or projects to be? So we never wavered from that. When I was working with Dale Talon, especially in Florida, it was always the best available player. And if you look at the Panthers today, coming off a Stanley Cup win again, all the assets that Bill Zito was left when our staff was shuffled out, and he moved them out because other teams really valued them. The Owen Tippett's of the world, the Mike Mathesons. Montembeault was a waiver situation, but Spencer Knight this year, they don't get Seth Jones if there's no Spencer Knight to move out. So those are examples of what I'm trying to tell you. Those assets have to be attractive enough to other places so that you can build up your roster when you're in that window.
Yeah, and then going back to your time with the Panthers too, you spent about 10 years there and then 5 years before with the Nashville Predators. Is there a time where you thought that someone should have been ranked much higher than the consensus? If we look at your draft history with the Florida Panthers over the last 10 years, second most games played among third round picks or later. So is there a player specifically in mind that you kind of ranked higher than the consensus, or conversely, a player you ranked lower than the consensus who ended up being pretty good?
Yeah, I would say that, we drafted Henrik Borgstrom in the first round in 2016 in Buffalo, and we really felt like he had star potential, top line star potential. And for a variety of reasons, it didn't work out for Henrik. He ended up being he kind of bounced around a little bit here in North America, but he was leading scorer, second leading scorer in the SHL this year in Sweden. I think there's still an NHL future on the horizon for him. But it's beyond that. So that one there, it just didn't play out on the development side of things. And that's disappointing for sure. A guy actually coming out of the same draft that I admittedly missed on because I didn't think that I loved his hockey IQ. I loved the way he managed the puck in the offensive zone, but I wasn't sure that his skating was going to be at the level it was required to be to defend properly in addition to his offensive upside, and that was Adam Fox with the New York Rangers. So I would say that's definitely a miss. But for the misses, you also end up having guys like Mackenzie Weegar, who we drafted like the fourth last pick in the draft, Paul Gallagher. Full transparency, you really rely on your local scouts, your regional guys, to have a real shine on for people and a lot of intel on them when you're drafting from, call it the fourth round on for sure. And Paul Gallagher, who is our regional scout in Halifax, where Mackenzie Weegar played on the same team as Nathan McKinnon, so it wasn't hard to miss him or hard to get him. Obviously, you're going to see him play. He had a lot of intel on him, and obviously we rolled the dice there, and he's had a heck of a career. And that was another asset that Bill Zito was able to trade out with Jonathan Huberdeau, right, to Calgary to bring in Matthew Tkachuk. So you always have the good, the bad, but it's really important to hit on players in the back half of the draft, as you saw in the graphic, because in a hard cap universe that we live in, those are the guys that are going to come cheap for a longer period of time on their entry level situations, and they give you time to build out the rest of your roster.
100% agree. And like you mentioned, the hard cap makes it really, really, you have to put a lot of emphasis on drafting well to be able to build that out. But then also, like you mentioned, Bill Zito making those right moves, trading for Matthew Tkachuk, trading for Sam Reinhart when the iron strikes, trading for Sam Bennett. And those guys played key roles on that Florida Panthers Stanley Cup back-to-back team. Let's dive into this year's draft. So Matthew Schaefer is the projected #1 overall pick. He seemed to set himself apart from the other top prospects such as Michael Misa, James Hagens, Anton Frundell. So what is it you like about Matthew Schaefer's game? He had 22 points in 17 games with Erie this year, broke his collarbone for Canada at the World Juniors. And how does he compare to some of the more recent top defensemen drafted, like an Owen Power, Rasmus Dahlin, the last two #1 overall picks, or even Simone Nemec? You got Artem Leshunov, who got drafted last year, second overall, Jake Sanderson. What do you like about Schaefer's game?
Well, he kind of encompasses a bunch of qualities he kind of grabs qualities from all those players you just mentioned right there, and he's a complete player. So, obviously he was held back due to injury this year, which was unfortunate because he had a ton of momentum coming off the World Championships last year as an underage in Finland, and then the summer team at the Helenka tournament. This guy's a complete player. In his last 10-game segment, and I know he only played 17, but in his last 10-game segment in Erie, he was over 30 minutes a night in all situations. Now, that's insane. Nobody's going to be able to do that. But what do you want him to do? Well, just ask him. So plays real fast, quick in small areas. He's got plenty of physical pushback in the trenches. He can lead the rush, join it off the puck as an extra layer. But the real quality beside his skill set, like you can have all kinds of skill. All these guys at the top of the draft class have tons of skill, but they have to have a B game, and they have to have that on your worst day, the attribute between the ears, the mental makeup, that on your worst day you can push through and still be a very productive player. And that's exactly what Matthew Schaefer is. He's gone through tragedy off the ice, way more tragedy than any young person should have to endure. His mother passed from cancer a year and a half ago. Then his billet mom also passed shortly thereafter. And then, of course, injury. And when he walks into a room, Keith, he's gregarious. He lights up a room, and he's trustworthy. This is a future captain of the National Hockey League. So he's different than all the rest of those guys. But if the Islanders step up to the podium to select him, I envision him and Noah Dobson carrying the load on the back end for the Islanders for several years to come. And what a nice problem to have.
Definitely. And Matthew Godarsh, gets the chance to put his immediate stamp on a franchise with that move for Matthew Schaefer, presumably #1 overall pick. Going a little deeper into the draft, is there a player currently ranked outside of the top 10 right now that you think in 5 years in a redraft will be a no-brainer in the top 10? You look at guys like Matt Boldy and Seth Jarvis, who are mid-first round picks, who would definitely be top 10. Even guys like Wyatt Johnston, David Pasternak, guys later in the first round. Who's that guy this year that we're going to talk about for years to come?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I think there's a couple of candidates. You watch how the playoffs just ended, and that middle pairing defenseman that you need to play heavy, hard minutes, he plays to an identity. So Keyshawn Aitchison from the Barrie Colts fits that category for me. I think he's the toughest player on all-round toughest player to play against in the Ontario Hockey League, and maybe the entire draft class. To be honest with you, he's like that. And I have Brady Martin inside my top 10. Not everybody does, but I think Brady Martin from the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds on the forward side of the ledger, he's a name to keep an eye on, because I think somebody's going to step up not only at this draft, but I think that in future people are going to ask themselves, why did I have this guy ranked so as low as I did? But Braden Coots from the Seattle Thunderbirds, I love this guy. He absolutely plays like his hair is on fire. He's kind of like a Brendan Gallagher type when Gallagher was younger. A point-a-game type player, plays in all situations, leader. He was a captain in Seattle, captain of Team Canada. This guy is a hard out every shift, no matter what the scenario is. So 3-on-3, 4-on-4, even strength scenarios, kill penalties, push the pace, but just never goes away. He's like a rash, and you need those kinds of guys to win in playoffs. And he's affable like that. I think that's a name to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, we'll see how the draft plays out, but there's always guys that you can find kind of towards the end of the first round that end up falling down the rankings a little bit, that end up being one of those top players from the draft. I have a question, too, on your process now, because now you're working with the Pro Hockey Group. You're still building out draft rankings. You're going on different media hits talking about all these guys. How has your process kind of evolved over the past 15 to 20 years? I know you worked in Nashville and Florida, and then there's the new analytics. There's a lot more data and information accessible. So I'm curious how your process has changed, and if you working for, your own company at the Pro Hockey Group as opposed to an organization, is there more freedom to rank these guys where you feel comfortable? Is there, less groupthink and organizational bias? How has that all played out for you?
Yeah, so in terms of the organizational bias, I do have 9 people on my staff that work around the world and view prospects and file reports. And obviously, I take into account all of their expertise and make sure that I'm not creating a bias. So the one thing that you have to be careful about in scouting is exactly that. You can't create a bias on a player. You have to be open-minded enough to recognize that you might have caught him on his worst day, and you might have caught him on his best days too. It works both ways that way. I've evolved since I was working in Nashville. I think in that category specifically, not being so stubborn in my beliefs, understanding that the game around the world is played differently. So when I first started in Nashville, I was a regional scout, so I was responsible for Ontario and NCAA hockey, and it was called what is the Big Ten now, like Michigan and Ohio State and all that. And so I was pigeonholed into that area without the knowledge that I earned when I was in Florida, which is being in Europe 3 or 4 times a year to see how the European game is played at the junior level and the pro level, being in Russia to see how there's limited opportunities for some of these guys to perform. So you really have to pay close attention. How do you value a kid out of Liga compared to a kid out of the Western Hockey League, all these types of things. So it's like a big melting pot, and you just evolve. You evolve, and then with experience, you try and make sure that you're not missing anything. You're not leaving anything unturned. So, but in terms of the list building itself, though, I build my list the same way I did in Florida. I build it exactly, as if I'm going to be drafting an NHL team. I do not talk to any other NHL scouts on the tour about it. I go to all the events. I go to live viewings, and then obviously I value the analytics that I have access to at Sportsnet and the NHL Network, and then of course video scouting as well to double down on something. It's always wise to take a look. The trap of video scouting, Keith, that you have to be careful with as a scout is that it's a TV shot, right? So what does a TV shot do? It follows the puck. You're not always seeing the prospect. Sometimes it goes out of frame, he comes back into frame. You're not going to see him on a late zone exit or a late zone entry, and why? Yeah, questions why. And so you use those things as tools, but there's no sacrifice there's no replacing live viewings. You got to get to the rink.
Well, Books, yeah, this has been great. Like we mentioned at the intro of the episode, if you go to PuckPedia.com, his 396 scouting reports from the Pro Hockey Group is available on PuckPedia. If you get it now through June 30th for only $1 US or CAD, no commitment required. One final question I have for you. What advice would you give to the average person who wants to break into the NHL, either as a scout or in a front office? They don't have a playing background, but they're really passionate about the game, and they want to kind of continue their career on this path, similar to what you kind of built for yourself.
Yeah, so get involved in the game at a young age and accept the fact that it's like an apprenticeship that doesn't feel like it's ever going to end until it does, and you get that opportunity. So minor hockey, get involved in the junior hockey in your area, and be present, like be in the rinks. Make sure that people are visibly seeing how hard you're working, and then network. There's no secret to it, but success breeds opportunity. So hopefully when you have all these pit stops, wherever those may be, junior hockey specifically for me in Sault Ste. Marie before I got my first NHL job, we were one under division 4 years in a row or 3 years in a row, and we were competitive all 4 years, and that gave an opportunity. And hard work. There's no replacing hard work and perseverance, and it's going to be a snail's pace, but stick with it is what I would say.
Well, Books, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for the time. We look forward to seeing you on Sportsnet and on NHL Network, breaking down the NHL Draft, which is coming to you in a couple days' time here in Los Angeles. We'll see the next batch of NHL superstars potentially get drafted. And like we mentioned, if you go to ProHockeyGroup.com, you can get Jason Bukala's scouting reports and all the good information on those prospects. Thanks, Books.
Awesome, Keith. Thanks for having me on. Good luck with the podcast. This is great.
PuckPedia.com